It seems like the youth is stepping up for this program and potentially pushing for more opportunities. So is the future now when it comes to the Gophers, young players, and trying to get opportunities? That's what we're going to talk about today at Locked On Golden Gophers.
Hey,
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota
Whatever
Golden
turns out,
Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. We're into March. The madness begins, but unfortunately for the Gophers women, they are out of that madness. They are out of the Big Ten tournament, and they likely aren't looking to make any postseason tournaments, so that will be the year for them. Gophers men's hoops still have a chance to try and make some noise to end the season with their final 2 home games, and then they head into the Big Ten tournament. Now, the outlook isn't bright. There isn't a lot of hope, but hopefully the Gophers can walk away with some wins and some positivity to close this year, because it ain't been pretty in the recruiting front, on the coaching front, what's been happening on the floor, injuries. You can't use injuries as the full excuse, but there's so much happening that it's just like, how do we make the next step forward? And we'll talk about that all off season, but today we're talking about football, and I want to be sure to dive in because we're going to talk about the questions heading into spring. And is it now the time to make a youth movement and let some of these young upside guys play in a lot more opportunities heading into the 2023 season? Be sure to hit subscribe. Let me know some young players that you have on your list that you're excited for, you want to see more of, you're curious to see how they show out for the Gophers football team. Drop them in the comments. We'll keep eyes on them. I'll keep notes on them as we get into the spring sessions that open up for media, and be sure to report back. Now, let's jump in. Let's talk about the offensive side of ball first. And there are a lot of questions heading into this offseason. And the first one is, how will this offense shake out? Does it get more to a balanced approach? Do we see more of passing from this offense? Just to be fully frank with you, I mean, with more balance overall and hopefully cracking inside the top 100, we can start to focus and build this thing around a QB talent that this program hasn't seen in quite some time. So hopefully the time is now, and hopefully we'll see more of that. But how does it all shake out? There are a lot of questions on the offense, but there are even more questions on the defense when it comes to personnel and who is starting. Is now the time to make a shift with younger players, learning maybe early on in these first few games, but throwing them into the fire, and hopefully they show that upside, they show that talent moving forward, and we have something to continue to build on, not only in 2023, but beyond. Guys that can be centerpieces for years, developing even more pro prospects with more experience. I think that time could be now when it comes to the future. So let's talk about what this starting lineup looks like for the offense. You've got Ethan locked in there at quarterback, signed, sealed, delivered, write it off, move it on. Running back, it's a big question. I do think we see a split workload. We just did an entire show on the running back room earlier this week, so definitely give that a look if you haven't already. But I think it comes down to Sean Tyler and Zach Evans this year. Darius Taylor, maybe he can push and carve out a role. You've got Bryce Williams and Trey Potts. Maybe they have some say in some complementary roles. But overall, looking at only 2023, I think Sean Tyler is locked in as a graduate transfer. From there, it's who's the second, and I think Zach Evans will push for that role. Then you move on to the wide receiver position. I think there's 2 locks from the jump. You got Chris Ottenbell, you got Daniel Jackson. Both have consistently showed out. Both have shown talented attributes in the route running departments, have sure hands, and they can create separation. So you add those 2 guys, but then who is the third? Who is it? Dalen Wright? Is it one of the young guys you just brought in? Of the entire class that you just had, is it the Burner and Christian Hoskins? Is it the transfers coming in from Charlotte and Western Michigan? Who takes that third starting position? It's one of the biggest questions in the offense, and I think it likely is a slot receiver player unless they move Daniel Jackson to the slot more often. But I see Jackson and Chris Bell likely playing majority on the outside. Both can play in the slot, but I think you look towards a true slot player, and I think Michael Brown-Stephens was the guy that they tried to have be the guy, the figurehead of that position last year, and it didn't work out. So I think Corey Crooms gets the first shot. I think he is going to be the third receiver locked in, but only time will tell, and that is definitely a room we'll have our eyes on the most as we move forward. Then you move to the offensive line. There are so many questions here. There's 3 starters up for grabs. I think you have Ariante Ursery locked in at your left tackle. You have Quinn Carroll, who could play either right tackle or right guard for you. But I think that's determined on who else steps up and is ready to be that dude on the offensive line. And that's where this question really comes in for me. Do you play it safe? Do you put in a Carter Shaw and a Nathan Bowe and have them be your interior at the left guard and the center, guys who are heading into their last year of eligibility but haven't really started anywhere for the Gophers? They've had some spot minutes. They've had some backup rotational spots when needed after injuries, but they haven't been the guy. Do you use this year because you know you can trust them and put them in as the guy? Or do you take a shot on the youth now and start to get your next guys of the future? Start to put in or test out a guy like Ashton Beers, a guy like Cade McConnell, a guy like Luke Purcell, a guy like, who knows, Greg Johnson, if he can step in from this spring sessions and really vault himself as a guy who has the talent and is starting to get it right away. If you can do that right now, is now the time to take that chance and let it build into something special. Because as much as we see success from guys like Axel Rushmeyer, Chuck Filiaga, these aren't the guys that are hearing their names called on draft day either, but the ones who are or have been for the Gophers, John Michael Schmitz, Daniel Faalele, guys who have been developing and growing early on in their careers, and then just push and push more with the consistency, with the talent that they continue to develop from youth to their senior years. I think now is the time to make that approach for the Gophers. I'm not a coach, but we'll see if that's the route they choose. If they can get a younger guy like a Cade McConnell, like a Ashton Beers, if Greg Johnson can push in. Reese Tripp has the big body, but I'm not sure he's quite there as far as being ready for this level of play. But these guys that I'm naming, I've seen flashes for them, or I've seen what the high upside could be. Do you get them looks now? So that's the big question with the offensive line. Again, one of my favorite prospects, or one of the favorite players on the team right now in that offensive line is Martez Lewis. I really hope he gets an opportunity to shine because I think he can be really good. He was great as the highest pass blocker on PFF last year for the Gophers. Hopefully he gets some time as well. And then you move to the tight end position. I think Brevin Spanford's got it on lock. Then you got Nick Caller up behind him who plays that additional tight end in different packages. He's more of the run blocking tight end, the O'Keefe of sorts. So I think those two hold down the fort. Maybe Gears gets a little bit more work this season, but we'll see what comes on that front. But the biggest questions for the offense in the offseason, how will the running back room shake up? How will it split? How will the carries be dispersed? Then you look at who's going to hold down the interior for the offensive line. Is it the youth movement or is it the veterans? And then will the Gophers pass the ball more? Not only in general, but also to the running back. It would be a shame if the Gophers don't find a way to get the running backs more incorporated in the passing game because they all have the ability and the talent. And they've shown it at the levels they've played. Darius Taylor, Marquise Williams, Sean Tyler, they've all shown, look, I can catch the ball and I can move. So we got to find ways to get it to them. I think we will. I think with the coaching changes we've seen, it looks like that is a route we could be going and headed towards, which would be immense. And then the final question for the offseason is, what is the next step that Ethan Kaliakmanis can take? And what does that look like? Now, I want to talk about the defense because I think there's even more questions on that side of the ball. All right, like I said, we're flipping to the defensive side of ball. And again, the same standard applies. The same question applies. Is it time to get these young guys involved? I truly think it is. When you're looking at these 4 transfers that are leaving the program, maybe, just maybe, the reason they're leaving is because they're being pushed by these younger players, because the opportunities look like they may not be there. because maybe Minnesota is headed towards more of a youth movement with so many departures. Now, when you look at the 4 transfers themselves, you have Flip Dixon leaving behind 413 snaps, Braylon Oliver, who's leaving behind 345 vacant snaps, Beanie Bishop leaving behind 303 vacant snaps and was likely to take a major role at the cornerback, at least so it seemed. And then Donald Willis, who was probably a leader in most people's minds for the Sam linebacker position, leaving behind 197 vacant snaps, but maybe we were all wrong there. Maybe he wasn't determined or set to be that Sam linebacker. Maybe that is what is leading to these transfers. Only time will tell. But you can't forget that there are a ton of vacant snaps from graduated players leaving as well. In fact, there's over 2,500. There are 2,540 snaps vacated by 4 players on the Gophers defense as starters last year: Jordan Howden, Terrell Smith, Mariano Sori-Marin, and Thomas Rush. Those 4 players accounted for 2,540 snaps. Those are all open and up for grabs. So there are a ton of opportunities for young guys to step in and make a name for themselves. Now, basically locked in as the starters at the edge position, I think Ja Joyner is locked, loaded, and ready to go. Danny Sturgow looks like he could possibly be across from him, but other names to potentially keep on the radar: Chris Collins, who just transferred in from North Carolina, Jalen Logan Redding, and my choice that I have my eyes on the most this spring when it comes to this thing is Anthony Smith. Dude is a dog. Dude has talent. Dude has bend. Athletic freak. I think he could start to push. I think he could start to make a name for himself, get some opportunities, and he is a name that I have circled on my list to definitely pay attention to this spring. You move to the interior defensive line. I think Trill Carter and Kyler Baugh both have that interior defensive position probably on lock when it comes to the starters, at least to kick off the year. But who are some other names that could work in, who could potentially be pushing them and trying to carve a rollout for themselves? You know, Devin Eastern is my guy. I am all aboard that train. I am just waiting for the opportunity because I truly think he is going to be a monster on this team. You've also got guys like Logan and Richter and Darnell Jeffries, who have both had some opportunities and could step in there. I think these are all guys that could work in rotationally. We know Joe Rossi loves to work with a rotational defensive line. So I think all these guys could hear their name called, but I'm really hoping and looking to see Devin Eastern take that next step, that leap to actually get on the field and get more experience. The talent's there. The build is there. Now it's time to let him shine. You move to the Sam linebacker position. I just said this one, I have no idea what is going on here. You know, if I had to guess based on some of the things I'm hearing, maybe you can see a guy like Maverick Baranowski move to that Sam linebacker position, but I think he could get looks at the Mike linebacker position. Maybe he gets a little bit of both. We've seen some versatility across the linebacker positions before. So maybe you see a little bit of Maverick there. Name that I've heard a lot during last year's Rofer sessions, the Sunday sessions in which they did and had the younger guys really try to step up and get minutes and get opportunities in live scrimmages and things of the sort. A name that I kept hearing is Tyler Stolsky. I have my eyes on him. I'm not sure if he is a straight up Sam linebacker or what position he leans towards in the linebacker room. But if it is that Sam, I think he could maybe carve out some time and carve out a role. He's definitely a name I've got circled. And then Joey Gerlach is a name. I know Ryan Burns, that's one of his guys. I know that he's got an eye on him. So as soon as Ryan Burns mentioned him, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that one as well. Hopefully we'll get Ryan on the show here again in the very near future and talk through some of this stuff, because it is the Wild West when it comes to this defense right now and who could possibly step up. Now you move to the middle linebacker. I think you've got Ryan Salig. I think you've got Maverick Baranowski. Maybe Cody Lindenberg could get some snaps there too, but I know he was an absolute force at the will linebacker position. So why break it if it ain't fixed, or why fix it if it ain't broke? You know the saying. That's how it goes. Anyways, I think Cody Lindenberg could be Cody linebacker. Cody Lindenberg will be at the will. The Mike may be more of the transfer from Michigan or Western Michigan, and Maverick Baranowski. I think those are the names that we see a lot of in that rotation. But another question mark for the Gophers. So you've got the Sam linebacker, major question. How do we pick up the pass rush? A major question. But then you got cornerback. Who is starting opposite of Justin Wally? Potentially you got Rylan Kelly, Tariq Watson. Maybe they go for a transfer after the spring is over. Who knows? Tons of questions there. The nickel, it seems like they went out and got Jack Hendrickson for that position. So I would not be surprised to see him get the first look there. Maybe you got a guy like Darius Green who could step in there as well. Darius Green also has his name up for the other starting safety position across from Tyler Nubin, or you could see the Bowl MVP Coleman Bryson take that position as well. There's a ton of youth in there. There's a ton of potential in there. Now it just starts to become who actually steps up and makes the most of it. The biggest questions for the Gophers on the defensive side of ball is who will be the other starting cornerback? Will they take a more youthful approach to filling those starter opportunities? Could so many snaps departed cause the Gophers to struggle early in the year defensively? Or will they be good right from the jump? You got a Nebraska matchup to kick off the year. It's not a non-conference right away. And then finally, could Minnesota increase that pressure on the quarterback? How do they do it? Can the working with the new defensive line coach help bring that facet to this pass rush, to the defensive line, to the edge rushers? Now, I truly believe now is the perfect time to take shots with those youth players, with more opportunities, getting them actual experience and swing for that upside, especially with the schedule we have moving forward, because hopefully that'll help Minnesota take the next step. But who are some of the young players that I have as the top of my list circled? We've talked about them throughout the show, but we're going to dive in deep coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, thank you for listening, making Locked On Golden Gophers your first listen when it comes to Gophers daily sports. Now we're wrapping this thing up with the young players that I have circled on my list this spring that I really want to keep an eye on and see how they're progressing, see if it looks like they're able to step into bigger opportunities. And the first of those is Maverick Baranowski. Look, football name, absolute football name. We've talked about it with Tristan Spanford on the show as well, but Maverick Baranowski, that's a name that you will have fun calling. So hopefully it's only right to get him some opportunities to get out there and shine, right? Now, I believe you could see him at the Mike linebacker or maybe the Sam linebacker positions. Highly talented. We've heard positive things about him in last year's spring practices and game. He saw brief moments in the fall camp of him, but I heard great things about him in the Rofer periods as well during the season. And I definitely think he will be seeing more opportunity this year. It's just a matter of how much opportunity will he be able to take on and flash on the field. The next player I have circled on my list, again, is Tyler Stolsky. Yes, I know he's a preferred walk-on. So was Jordan Howden. And Jordan Howden at the safety position was able to hold down the fort as a preferred walk-on for years. So don't let that completely rule anybody out. And what I've heard from Tyler Stolsky, about Tyler Stolsky in the Rofer periods is nothing but positive. My only question is what linebacker position has been his positional focus in that room? Has he been rotating all over? Has he been looking at the will position with Cody Lindenberg? Has he been on the Sam side? Has he been on the Mike? Where is his positional focus in that room? That's definitely the first thing I want to hopefully see more of and get answered in the spring sessions. And if it has been the Sam linebacker position, then I truly think he can at least carve out a role for himself with Donald Willis leaving and some of the other players that have left this Gophers defense. The next two players we definitely have circled on our list are at the cornerback position, Rylan Kelly and Tariq Watkins. Now, I personally loved what I saw from Tariq Watkins last year in the spring, in the fall camp, in the brief moments in the Western Illinois game. Even though a touchdown was scored on Tariq Watson, just his aggressiveness, how he is physical, how he is not afraid to back down from anybody. He went up against Dalen Wright one-on-one multiple times in the spring game last year, even though Dalen Wright's got like 3 to 4 inches on him. Tariq Watson is a dog. He pushes himself. He's physical and aggressive. Now, he was very much still learning last year and making some mistakes, but he isn't afraid to make the mistakes and learn from them. And that is huge at the cornerback position. Now, I think overall he will be a name that will scrap for more opportunities and more time. He got some second team reps in the practice sessions in fall last year. So overall, I think He is a name to definitely keep an eye on. I haven't seen as much of Rylan Kelly, but I've been hearing good things, and both of them saw minimal snaps in that Western Illinois blowout game last year. So hopefully we'll see more and more of both of them. Again, Rylan Kelly has stood out in some of those Rofer sessions, so he's a name I've got circled on the list. Then you move to two names that are in the running back room. You got Zach Evans, you got Darius Taylor. Both of them are circled on my list. Zach Evans, I truly believe, is going to be a focus in this running back room. I would be shocked. I would be baffled. I would be bewildered. Whatever other adjective you want to throw in there, that would be me if Zach Evans didn't get some opportunities and run away with them. And I'll own it. If I'm wrong on that one, I'm wrong, and I will absolutely come here and eat crow. But I truly believe Zach Evans is going to be out there, and he's going to be making a name for himself in a split running back room. Darius Taylor is the one that I am very curious about. I think he has all the talent in the world. He put on all the production in the world in high school. So is he able to carve out a role this year from the jump right away? Or does he take a redshirt year and then really run that room in the year to come, the year to follow? I think that's probably a more likely approach, but I'm very excited to see what he does in this early session and just to see him on the field with other college caliber athletes. The last two names we have to talk about. The first one is an offensive lineman, Cade McConnell. I was impressed with him last year. Seeing him in the size he had as a true freshman, I thought, wow, this dude could maybe play right now. I am nearly certain that I saw him taking some snaps at center last year in some of the Rofer periods during the late fall camp portion. And so if that's something he's been working on, if that's something that maybe he's working on in the Rofer sessions and got to pick the brain of John Michael Schmitz and got to ask, how do I move forward with this? How do I grow with this? How do I get myself in the position to play at this center position? Look, the sky could be the limit. And he is one that I will definitely have an eye on moving forward in this camp. Does he get looks at the center position? Is it more of the guard position? Where does he fit in this room? But I truly think he could be a name to watch, and he's at the top of my list. Other offensive linemen that I think will be curious to watch, see how they carve out a role, see if they get any opportunity at all to try and push for an actual starting spot, Ashton Beers and Greg Johnson. Now, I haven't seen Greg Johnson playing against D1 caliber opponents every single day, every single minute, every single rep. So that's something I'm looking forward to seeing, is how he holds his own as a true freshman, or will it take time? But Ashton Beers is a name that was in the twos last year that I think could maybe push for some opportunities with the ones this offseason. The final player that I have circled on my list in this youth movement, in the time that I'm hoping that each and every one of these players we've listed gets opportunities to shine on the field when it matters under the lights, the final one is Anthony Smith. Absolute athletic freak, hooper, he balls. I've heard good things from offensive players, from defensive players, from coaches. We've seen him thrive in the very limited moments that he got to be on the field while maintaining his red shirt. I believe he might have had a sack in that first game or two when he got in late in the game. Look, Anthony Smith, all he needed to do was continue to build strength and get up to speed. If he has this entire offseason and it shows he's up to speed, look out. He is probably the most intriguing player on my list of all these guys. I love Maverick Baranowski. I love Zach Evans, Tariq Watson. Those are my guys when it comes to, I'm excited by the potential, but Anthony Smith tops the list. I cannot wait to see what he does, and hopefully it starts in this redshirt freshman year in 2023. That's going to do it for us on Locked On Golden Gophers. Be sure to hit subscribe. Let me know what players you're looking forward to when it comes to Gophers football, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow, folks. Row the boat, Sky Uma, go Gophers.